a son of a traitor, wants to redeem himself by clearing his father's name, proving himself as one of the best Starfall warrior reserve coming from the lower ranks, and then rising up like the meteor in the night sky. The story begins with Zuo Fan visiting his dad in the prison for a crime he truly believes his father didn't commit. Whereas 8 years ago, a raid of monsters destroyed the city in just one swoop and became China's greatest disaster in history. People needed a fall guy to blame it to, so they turned to Zuo's dad, who happens to be the only survivor of the monster outbreak and has been labeled a deserter abandoning his duty. The worst is yet to come. Zuo's life has been a series of misfortunes. From being expelled at school, he can't even get a regular job. Even when donating his blood, people just simply don't want to be associated with him. But Zuo only holds into his faith of maybe someday, he could clear the name of his father and leave it all behind. After his visitation, the guard now informs him that the prison fee went up to 3 times for his next visit. Zuo is surprised when he hears this. After all, his odd job being a low-ranking mercenary is just enough for his expenses for a month. He then looks at his stats thinking, I have the worst stats ever, a regular mercenary would have all double digits in them. Then he looks at his necklace, it's the only valuable thing he got since it is made from a meteor fragment from the night of the starfall. And also it is given as a present by his departed mother. He thinks of just selling it, but again it's a definite no. At the mercenary hall, even his co-workers hated his guts from being around him. But he needed a job so he just tolerates them. A man called Uncle Gao has been disturbed by the eager young hero asking to give him an E-rank mission. He's been immediately reprimanded by calling him Uncle Fatty instead of his regular name. Back to the business, he warned Zuo that E-rank missions are considered to be very dangerous for a lower mercenary like him, but the hero is desperate for a higher salary. The boss informs him that good thing a certain group is currently looking for a scout in their team. Zuo then expresses his gratitude for trusting him to do the job. That night, the hero now prepares as he recollects that the team is composed of all Starfall warriors with novice ranks and higher, so he had to keep up with them for sure. Next he approaches the whole team, then is surprised by a beautiful girl named Yinyu, who greets him and introduces herself as the party leader. He notices that the girl also carries a sword that bears a monster core with it. He recalls that monster core can only be found among thousands of monsters but only one can be produced. And this Starfall equipments with monster cores can amplify a warrior exponentially. Zuo introduces himself as recommended by Uncle Gao and also mentions his name. The two have an awkward stare at each other thinking the same thing about the hero's last name. Also included in the party is the hostile Muji, and an old-looking guy named Uncle Hanhu, who also wields another equipment with a monster core with it. There are 6 people in the group including Zuo. Although he is greatly intimidated with the people whose rank is higher than he is, he's just so happy that one mission is 10 times more payment than his whole month's salary. Off goes the whole team to a place where a group of monsters gathers and goes around rampantly. Some monsters can't be killed by ordinary bullets, so they have to use equipment made with monster materials. These kind of weapons is quite expensive, and is considered a luxury just to own one. As an assigned scout, Zuo starts his work by testing the area and now looking at a horde of fish lizard monsters eating. The hero aims his arrow and tries to kill one. Unfortunately this just bounced off from the monster and only angers it. Of course the other fish lizards are alerted by the possible threat, and chases after Zuo down the hallway. He runs thinking also some strategy on how to defeat it, that these monsters are strong but at the same time they all have weaknesses. And as the monster lashes out its elongated tongue towards him, he pierces it with his arrows thinking it must be its weakest spot. But it's no use, the arrow just slips out of its tongue and then healing it that made him petrified. Only if he wields a better weapon made with monster materials, he could easily defeat it himself but to no luck. Good thing he has another plan which is luring it to the outside, and everybody is there preparing for combat. The monster bashes the cement wall, and Uncle Hanhu uses his shield to counter it with his sword. Next is Yinyu who also attacks it, and slices it into 2. For them it's so easy because of their equipment and everyone praises the girl. Little did they know, the monster is still alive doing its dying counterattack and everyone is in shock. Zuo with Muji beside him, intentionally pushes the main character to be his meat shield and is about to be devoured by the monster. But with his quick reflex, he immediately rolled down the ground at the same time shoots his crossbow to the enemy piercing its eye. And for the final blow, Yinyu finishes it with her trusted sword. After that, no one is harmed from the battle. And as a leader, Yinyu reprimanded Muji for what he did earlier and made him clean up the monster's remains. The night falls deep and the hero stays awake to keep watch while others get their rest. Later Yinyu approaches and tells him she's going to keep watch that night as well. The girl is really nice, and says that she doesn't mind doing guard duty during missions. Zuo then notices her accent and asks if she's from City J. The girl confirms it by saying yes, and added it's where the horde of monsters first appeared in China. Having said that, she is used to do missions like this growing up. Surprisingly, the ground beneath them begins to crumble and they fall, ultimately shouting for their lives. Unknowingly to them, a mysterious figure appeared from above and seems to have caused it. After a while, somehow the two manages to drop off safely below and are now finding themselves inside an abandoned tunnel. Zuo tells the leader not to worry as he is confident that he came prepared studying the city map before the mission. They walk past now a narrow hallway having an optimistic mind to the road ahead. Then suddenly, Yinyu stops because she senses something different. She told him that many monsters are approaching, and yet Zuo hears nothing at all, so he panics. The girl added it's actually the sword telling her about the situation, and this type of weapons has an accurate sense of perceiving monsters nearby. Eyes that are glowing red appears before them, and then immediately run towards them like a group of rabid animals. Yinyu takes initial action as she is the only one that can hurt these fish lizards, and she also uses her ultimate move in order to protect them both. She sweeps the room like an elegant swan using her sword, and Zuo is impressed seeing her. He even made a chart to categorize monsters ranking to a mercenary ranking equivalent. At the end, Yinyu finishes the monsters off without even a scratch on her and instructs Zuo that she is now ready to leave. But then a roadblock stands before them and they cannot go through, as Yinyu is now pointing to the hero her sword, suspecting a foul play on his part. Zuo gets mad on why he is being threatened by the leader. The two have a silent stare at each other. Then later, Yinyu draws in her sword saying she's just testing him out. She added that these situations seem to be too obvious to be just accidents. She tells a story about Starfall families building up, ever since this new world started, and it goes by saying the strong leave, and the weak dies. And to avoid furthermore competitions in this expanding business, other families are targeting me for that sole purpose. Zuo now understands what she's trying to say. As time goes by, they finally found the exit outside the tunnel. Yinyu smiles, thanking the hero she's lucky to be teamed up with him. But Zuo gets tired from all their running, and confesses that he cannot keep up with the leader's stamina. At that time, Zuo opens up on why he is doing these dangerous missions. He remembered the day before the disaster happens. His family is planning to have a trip on the ocean side for the very first time. After that, his mother died to a monster outbreak. He was still too young to understand on seeing her mother's name in the list of the dead. Yinyu felt bad for everything that happened. Moments later, they reached the end of the tunnel. But the girl saw something approaching them very fast, and it's a barrage of arrows going towards them. Yinyu saves the main character, but unfortunately she's been hit by one of it. What's worst is that the arrow is tainted with poison, so they must act quickly. Luckily Zuo comes prepared as always and have an antidote with him. The girl then talks to the people outside, saying she can't believe that they are the ones who would betray her. Now appears Uncle Hanhu, who is disappointed that her niece is still alive after that surprise attack. Zuo realizes that the mission is only a setup to target the girl from the beginning.